Have you ever wondered why, despite your best intentions, you end up buying things you didn't plan for? Maybe it's that coffee you grabbed on your way to work or a flashy sale that you couldn't resist. In fact, the phenomenon of spending more than we anticipate is something that happens to almost all of us, even when we try to budget carefully. But what if I told you that the root cause of this behavior lies not in our individual flaws, but in the way our brains are wired? Behavioral economics explains just that. It sheds light on the hidden psychological forces that drive us to make decisions we often don't understand. At its core, behavioral economics challenges the assumption that we always act in a rational, logical manner when making financial decisions. Instead, it focuses on the cognitive biases and emotional triggers that influence our choices. These biases, often subconscious, affect everything from our shopping habits to how we save money and plan for retirement. Understanding these biases can help us see how our financial decisions are shaped by factors far beyond simple price comparisons or careful calculations. One key concept in behavioral economics is the idea of anchoring. Anchoring occurs when we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we encounter when making decisions. For example, let's say you're in a store looking at a jacket. You see one priced at $500, which seems expensive. But then you notice another jacket, which is priced at $300. Suddenly, that $300 jacket doesn't seem so bad anymore, even though it's still quite expensive compared to what you'd originally planned to spend. The first price you saw, $500, anchors your judgment and makes the $300 jacket seem like a bargain, even if it's not. Another powerful force that influences our spending is loss aversion. This principle suggests that the pain of losing something is psychologically stronger than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. In simpler terms, we're more motivated to avoid losses than to pursue gains. This is why you might find yourself clinging to that subscription service you no longer use, just to avoid the feeling of wasting money, even though canceling it would actually save you. This concept also helps explain why sales and discounts are so effective. They often focus on making you feel like you're losing a deal if you don't act now, prompting you to make a purchase. A related concept is the endowment effect. This refers to the tendency for people to place a higher value on things merely because they own them. For instance, imagine you receive a free pen at a conference. If someone offers to buy it from you for $5, you might hesitate. Even though the pen costs nothing, your attachment to it makes you overestimate its value. Similarly, when we make a purchase, the endowment effect can kick in, making it harder to let go of an item once we own it, even if we didn't really need it in the first place. Mental accounting is another way that behavioral economics influences spending. This refers to the way people tend to categorize and treat money differently, depending on where it comes from or what it's intended for. For example, you might view money you receive as a bonus differently from your regular paycheck and treat it as extra money to spend on something indulgent. This separates it mentally from the money you need for essentials, like rent or groceries. This is why people often splurge when they receive unexpected income, like a tax refund or a bonus, even though they might not spend similarly if they were using their regular savings. Behavioral economics also highlights how social influence can shape our spending. We're influenced by what others are doing, whether it's through social media, advertisements, or the people around us. The idea of social proof suggests that we're more likely to make purchases if we see others doing the same. This is why you might find yourself gravitating toward products that are labeled most popular or top-rated, without fully questioning why everyone else is buying them. In many cases, just the knowledge that others are making the same decision triggers a psychological urge to follow suit, even if the product doesn't meet our initial needs. Another related force is commitment bias, which occurs when we make decisions that bind us to future behavior. This bias explains why subscription models, such as those for streaming services or gyms, are so effective. Once you sign up for a gym membership, you may feel compelled to keep going, even if you're not really using it. It's the same reason why we tend to stick with brands or products we've purchased before, even when better alternatives exist. The psychological commitment we feel makes it difficult to change our choices, even when they're no longer optimal. Finally, we cannot ignore the role of present bias in our spending habits. This bias makes us focus on immediate rewards and gratification rather than future benefits. For example, you might buy a new phone today, even though you know you should be saving for an emergency fund or retirement. The immediate pleasure of owning something new outweighs the distant, abstract benefit of saving money for the future. This is why it's so hard to save consistently, and why credit card debt is so pervasive. People tend to prioritize short-term satisfaction over long-term security. When we zoom out, we begin to see a broader pattern. Behavioral economics doesn't just explain individual spending decisions. It reveals how societal structures are designed to capitalize on these psychological tendencies. Retailers, advertisers, and even policymakers use these principles to craft environments that encourage spending and discourage saving. From limited-time offers to the way we're constantly surrounded by advertising, these forces shape the way we interact with money on a daily basis. But this awareness doesn't just help us understand why we spend. It also empowers us to make more conscious financial decisions. By understanding the biases that shape our choices, we can take steps to mitigate their influence. For example, we might be more mindful of the initial price anchors we encounter, recognize when we're being manipulated by social proof, or learn to delay gratification by shifting our focus from immediate rewards to long-term goals. The first step toward changing our behavior is awareness. Understanding that our decisions are often influenced by factors we don't even recognize. Once we become more conscious of these forces, we can begin to take control of our finances. It's not about eliminating emotional decisions altogether, but about striking a balance between the rational and the emotional. Ultimately, behavioral economics teaches us that spending isn't just a matter of willpower or bad habits. It's about understanding the complex psychological dynamics that influence our choices. With this knowledge, we can start to make more informed decisions, both in our personal finances and in our broader economic systems. In conclusion, while we may never fully escape the pull of our biases, recognizing the ways in which behavioral economics shapes our decisions allows us to take more control over our financial futures. It's not about avoiding spending altogether. It's about being mindful of how and why we spend, and making choices that are more aligned with our true financial goals.